But I just thought back to the 10 years of struggle that I had, and it wasn't until I found a community of women that were doing what I wanted to do that I got help and figured out how to run my business as an entrepreneur and got that mentorship that I needed. And so when I kind of put those 2 things together and I thought, I wanna build the thing that I wish I had when I was struggling as a musician.
You're listening to The Creative Imposter, episode number 40. Welcome to the Creative Imposter podcast. I'm Andrea Klunder, and today I am bringing you an interview with Bree Noble of Women of Substance Radio and a second podcast, which has now turned into also a coaching, business, and supportive community for female musician entrepreneurs called Female Entrepreneur Musician. So Bree is an accountant, musician, entrepreneur, and mentor specifically for women musicians who want to take their creative art form and turn it into a sustainable business and lifestyle. Very often, as creatives, it can be really challenging to think of our art or our music or our passion as a business, but that is exactly what Bree's zone of genius is. This is super timely because right now in the Creative Imposter Facebook group and the Chicago Women's Creative Collective, we are focusing on a theme of self-promotion in a totally non-spammy way. And if there's anything that you can learn from this talk with Bree, you will learn that self-promotion is not a bad thing, and in fact, when done right, can be a key to building community that can be of value to more than just yourself. Whether or not you are a musician, you will find this conversation so informative because she is so generous in sharing her own personal journey and story about how she has dealt with feelings of imposter syndrome. If you can imagine being a director of finance for an opera company as your day job and trying to hustle as a singer-songwriter in the off time, and then quitting that job to make the transition to doing music full-time, and then making the transition to figure out how to coach other people to be successful at doing the same, you can imagine then that there were a lot of imposter moments for Bree along the way. And Bree's mission is to help women get out of the starving artist or starving musician mentality. And I think that that is a mentality that we can all say goodbye to and just own our art, own our creative passion, own our music, and become more confident with sharing it with the world in a way that makes good, smart business sense. You can learn more about Bree at femmusician.com. That's femusician.com or breenoble.com. And if you are a musician, you will definitely want to check out her free resources at that same website, including 19 sources for income for your musician business. Yes, there are more ways to make money as a musician than just selling CDs and touring. And this free guide is going to open up your mind to some possibilities that you may not have even considered. So here it is, my conversation with Bree Noble.
I run a couple of businesses that are all related to female musicians. So I have a radio station and podcast called Women of Substance Radio. And I think it's interesting that today we're recording this on International Women's Day. So there's been
Yeah.
all the flurry going on all of my websites and all of my social media about National Women's Day. And, I've been celebrating all of my artists because obviously we couldn't do what we do without them. So, it's very poignant today to be talking about this. So I have a radio station and podcast, and then I have a platform for helping the musicians that are on my radio station with their career. So helping them with learning the business side of music, learning how to market themselves, learning how to actually make money with their music, get booked for gigs and house concerts and things like that. So I have a site called The Female Entrepreneur Musician where I teach a lot of that stuff for free. And then I've got my Female Musician Academy, which is my membership site where I do group coaching with them. We have accountability, all kinds of like higher level training. And that is my absolute favorite thing right now. I absolutely love working with my members. We are nearing 100 members right now. And it's just so fun to interact with them and be able to help them on a daily basis.
How did you figure out how to do all those things? Because I think being an artist or being a musician or a performer and figuring out how to make a living and have a sustainable lifestyle and how to think like a business owner or an entrepreneur is a huge challenge. And I'm wondering, how did you figure everything out?
Well, that's definitely my passion for this is that I feel like there's so many musicians out there that are really talented, have quality music, but they're not thinking like entrepreneurs. And because of that, they're not making money. They are, not understanding how to actually run it like a business. And so even myself, so I have a background in finance. I was a director of finance at an opera company for several years. I had a double degree in business and music. So I had that background. But the funny thing is, when I left my director of finance job and went on to be an independent musician and start touring, it was like all my business sense went out the window. It was like I'm in this, creative pursuit now, and I'm just thinking about the creating of the music and all that, and I didn't just even think like, "Oh, I need to run this like a business." I just thought, "Well, I'll just wait around and try to attract someone's attention who's going to kind of establish my career for me." And I wasn't thinking for so long about, I have the ability to build this on my own, just like I would a business from scratch. And once I finally figured that out, I immediately started having success and making money as a musician. But it took me many years of trying to do this on the side while I was working as a director of finance and completely failing and crashing and burning at it because I was looking at it from the completely wrong perspective.
First of all, what opera company were you working for?
It's called Opera Pacific. They don't actually exist anymore. They went under in 2009 because of the terrible economy back then.
In Santa
But
Ana, right?
yes.
So I used to work, this is really funny, but I used to work for the Lyric Opera of Chicago. I worked in the technical and production department, and one of the things that I was in charge of was managing all of the communication when opera companies would rent productions from each other and all of those agreements and transporting sets and costumes. So we definitely worked with Opera Pacific frequently. So I remember you
Yes,
guys.
I definitely remember cutting checks to Lyric Opera of Chicago. So that's funny.
And then second of all, are you instrumentalist, vocalist, both?
So I'm a singer-songwriter, so I do keyboard-based singer-songwriter style, really positive music, some Christian, a lot of crossover, and it's all piano-based.
And did you do that before becoming a director of finance? Or have you always been a musician, or is that something that came later?
No, I was always a musician. I was in every choir I could be in high school, did solo competitions, was a vocal major in college, and performed with the school's touring band where we did, pop rock kind of music and a cappella. So, that's what I wanted to do when I left school, but I didn't have any idea how. And so I fell back onto my second love, which was accounting and finance, knowing that that would make me a living, but constantly and always trying to figure out the music stuff on the side.
That sounds so familiar. I also originally went to college for vocal music performance
Mm.
and was studying opera. And you couldn't have a conversation, or I couldn't have a conversation with anyone without there being this sidebar or follow up of saying, "Oh, are you double majoring in something so that you have a fallback career?" Like, it wasn't good enough to major in vocal performance. You had to also have this double major of something, whether that be music education or whether that be business or communication or, something of that nature, because it's super risky to just be a performer.
Yeah, oh, I know. And it was, I went through the stage where I thought, well, I'll just teach, but I found that I wasn't that excited about teaching voice. And it's so ironic now because now I teach musicians and coach them, but on the business side. And so
Mm.
I do teach, but I still don't have a passion for teaching voice.
It's kind of like if you're going to be a musician or a singer or performer, you must also teach it because that's the only
Right.
way you're going to make any money. But you have some different ideas about that, about how you can actually thrive and make money as a musician without necessarily having to be a voice teacher. So, can you share what some of those tactics are?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it all starts with building your fan base because that is where all the money stems from. There are, opportunities to create paid fan clubs where you maybe deliver a new song to them every month or a new video and they're supporting you using platforms like Patreon or Bandcamp. You can do house concerts, which I love because you don't have to deal with the booking agents and the promoters and, I mean, there's such a big thing where you have to kind of bring a draw, like commit to say, I could bring 25 people before they'll even book you at a lot of places. And so house concerts are an opportunity to, find a few of your really big fans and you can even just start with friends and do concerts in someone's living room and you just start expanding your circle that way. Those 20 people are hanging out with you for 2 hours. They're gonna become big fans of your music. They're gonna help support you. They're gonna wanna have concerts at their house, introduce their friends to you, and the circle just kind of expands little by little each direction. And what my experience as a musician is the more events that I did and the more I got my name out there and had people taking my flyers and my business cards and buying my CDs, just the more referrals that I got. And pretty soon I didn't have to be calling out and booking myself anymore because I had enough incoming calls.
Hmm.
So it really, I mean, it starts small. It's very grassroots based, in my opinion, when you're starting out and it's different depending on the genre you're in and, whether you have a band or you're a solo artist and, all of those things kind of color the way you approach it. But to me, it all starts with building your fan base.
So, you specifically work with women, and I think that there are a lot of industries in which women have particular challenges. I'm trying to think if there are any industries in which women do not have particular challenges. But I definitely, in the entertainment world in general, there's all this talk about women consistently being paid less than men, in terms of actors, Hollywood, theater, music is one of them. And I'm wondering how it is that you decided that you specifically wanted to work with women and what unique challenges you think that women face in the music industry.
It's interesting because it started just with my love of female singer-songwriters. And when I started the radio station, it was totally a hobby at first.
Mm.
I did it on the side. I was still working at the opera. I put together a list of music that I'd like to listen to at work and created a radio station for it online. It was back when it was free to run a radio station on Live 365. And, I came up with the name Women of Substance because I loved music that had a real message to it, had deep lyrics, and so that was where I came up with that. Put that together, listened to it at work, at home. It started catching on and stuff, but then it just kind of fell into the background for a while. And then once I left the opera and I was an independent artist, I saw so many other talented artists and I thought, I could use this platform to really promote them.
Mm.
And, I'd listen to the radio. I'd listen to, Star 98.7 in Southern California or Sirius XM or something. And I'd be like, how come over 80% of these songs I'm hearing are by men?
Mm.
And it frustrated me because I knew there was so much talent out there because I'd met these people. And so that was why I created the platform. And so I think, part of the challenge is for whatever reason, people think, or DJs or just the radio industry in general or radio promoters think that male artists are more popular with both males and females for different reasons. And so it just seems to be very saturated with males. And it's not that they're more talented. So that was what I set out to do with Women of Substance. And because I had this contact with thousands of artists after so many years, I decided to start, an academy for just women because I loved working with women. And I wanted to, really devote myself to helping them because I did feel like they were a bit the underdogs in the industry. And then it became this wonderful community and sisterhood, and I felt like with just women, people they were willing to be more open and honest with each other and ask for support and not feel like they look weak if they have a bad day because we all understand. And so not that I think that, all men are judgmental or anything. I try to avoid that kind of controversy because I don't believe that. I'm married to a man and, I have lots of men in my family that I highly respect. So it's not man bashing, it's just creating a community and a sisterhood for the women to help support each other. And I do think that I mean, I've heard so many stories now over the years of working with women where women have been marginalized, they have had inappropriate suggestions or almost threats made of them if they didn't do a certain thing, holding a carrot in front of them and then, basically threatening to take it away if they don't comply. And it's sad.
And so you were creating this radio station to showcase the artists and the talent that you both appreciated and also wanted to listen to yourself, and starting to build this platform for these female artists. And then at what point did it occur to you, or did you start thinking about actually coaching other artists?
Oh my gosh. Trying to think of exactly when it happened. I think maybe when I really got into listening to podcasts and I started hearing how other podcasters were using their platform to help the group of people that they were attracting for that podcast and then creating courses and stuff. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'll create a course for them. And then I love the idea of it being a community and I could just add stuff along the way and create courses and put it in there and, help them with the thing that they needed help with most. But I just thought back to the 10 years of struggle that I had. And it wasn't until I found a community of women that were doing what I wanted to do as female musicians in my genre that I got help and figured out how to run my business as an entrepreneur and got that mentorship that I needed. And so when I kind of put those 2 things together and I thought, I wanna build the thing that I wish I had when I was struggling as a musician.
And I know that mindset is something that's really important to you, or something that you talk about a lot. What are the kinds of things that you find that your clients, besides the community, which is such a huge thing, right? To be able to create this support community for women where they feel safe sharing their challenges and their successes and their questions and things like that. Beyond that, what are the biggest things that you end up working on with clients, particularly in terms of mindset?
I think the biggest thing is overwhelm. They're bombarded with so much information that they think they need to consume all of it because they might miss something that's gonna help give them that edge up. And I think that just leaves them completely stuck. So we do a lot of work on figuring out their core values and their goals, and I try to set them up with 90-day goals that then we can talk about, what are the exact actions you need to take each week in order to get these goals accomplished? Because most of them, they just feel so overwhelmed by all the information that they do nothing,
Mm.
or they're scared to take any step because they think it might be the wrong one. So the one thing is the goal setting, and I've actually created an accountability mastermind within the academy to help people that really wanna stay accountable and help them, like, flesh out all their action steps and stuff. But the other thing is they're trying to do things that are way ahead of where they are in kind of their journey as a musician through, like, what I call the stages of career growth. And so sometimes people are trying to get into these big venues or trying to get booked for festivals and they're not ready. Like there's no way they're ever going to get that because they don't have good enough recordings. They don't feel comfortable enough on stage because they haven't had enough practice. And so I try to take them through these stages of their career and help them when they first come into the academy, figure out where they are right now and then show them what they need to focus on to move to the next stage instead of getting overwhelmed by all the things they could be doing or like wasting their time and money on things that aren't going to work for them because they haven't gotten to that stage yet.
That's so important. I was just listening to, I can't remember which podcast. I listen to so many podcasts. I was just listening to, I think it was Natalie Lucier's podcast, which is a business and entrepreneurial oriented podcast. And she had someone on talking about, I think the topic was something like building beyond $1 million in your business or something like that. And what she was actually talking about was staying focused on one particular thing instead of trying to do everything at once. And really, saying, okay, well, maybe there's these 10 things that I do want to do in my business, and that's fine, but not all 10 at the same time, that there needs to be a progression and you're focusing on one main goal and putting one foot in front of the other in order to get to that goal. And then you can add another thing, and then you can add another thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so important. I see so many people that are standing in the same spot as they were a year ago because they're just like, it's like that deer in the headlights thing. And I'm trying to break them out of that.
And so you sound so clear and so confident in your abilities to help women musicians to move forward and to realize their full potential. And you've created this wonderful business for yourself. Have you always been so confident, even as you were shifting from one career to another? Or, I mean, as you know, this show is all about imposter syndrome and creative process. How has that ever come up for you, or has it ever come up for you?
Oh, yes, all the time. I mean, definitely when I moved from working at the opera to being a musician, I still hadn't figured any of that stuff out. And so definitely had that imposter syndrome like, could I, would people even pay me for what I offer? And I see a lot of my musicians go through this all the time. Like, am I good enough? There's so many other musicians out there. Why would anyone want to listen to me? And, then the same thing when you move into a space where you're coaching people, you're always like, well, this worked for me, but will it really work for these people? They're different from me. And so there's always that fear that like, you're like this, special snowflake or something. And what worked for you wouldn't necessarily work for other people. But deep down, I know it will, if they really follow my advice. And that's the other thing. I'm always like, well, how do I know they're going to follow my advice? If they don't follow my advice, then it won't work. And then they'll blame me. But, I know that it's because they didn't follow my advice. I feel like that has kind of been my struggle. But I think the thing that gets you out of that is seeing these unprompted testimonials that come out of my academy. And, they don't happen overnight. I've had the academy for almost 2 years. And, I had a few really great ones in the beginning, but then they start coming to me completely unprompted. And to me, that is the most amazing thing. Because, you can always do a survey and you can ask for testimonials and people will give them to you. But when they just post stuff in Facebook that you're not even asking for and not expecting, that's an amazing feeling. And those are the types of things that help me get over any imposter syndrome that I might be having.
And what do you recommend for your clients who are having these feelings of self-doubt or asking, like, I don't know if I can really make this. I don't know. I'm just wondering, maybe I should just throw in the towel on the whole thing. What do you recommend for them? Are there any tools or resources or practices that you have them engage in?
Oh, it's funny because I would say at least 10% of them have that maybe I should throw in the towel thing happen once a week. I mean, and I encourage them to post because there's so many people that are going to be encouraging them and supporting them through that because they've all felt that way. But one major thing that I do, and especially when they're starting out, is I say, go out and perform at a bunch of open mics. Like when you first start out, you can't expect to get paid at first because you haven't honed your craft on stage. You may have honed your craft as a vocalist, as a songwriter, but being on stage is a totally different thing. And, you need to learn what is going to give you confidence on stage, how to communicate with the audience, how to make your stage show interesting, all that stuff. And once you've accomplished that, then you will feel super confident and you'll feel like, yeah, maybe I could really make money from this because the product that I offer is good. You just have to get yourself out there. And even if you're performing to 5 people at a coffee shop, it's all a journey to getting to the place where you can actually ask money for what you do because you have to hone those skills. And it's not the same as practicing at home. You have to be in front of an audience.
That is such a good point, and I hadn't really thought about that before. I mean, obviously, I started this podcast a couple of years ago because I wanted to explore this idea of imposter syndrome. And for me, being a creative person, I've been a performer, I've been a tech person, I've been a media producer, I've been a teacher, I've been a yoga teacher, I've been all these different things. And I'm constantly feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. And constantly getting feedback, like those testimonials that come out of the blue, or those thank you notes for the work that you're doing, or those success stories from people who you've helped along the way. And so I'm constantly getting evidence that I'm doing well, I'm on the right track. And yet my brain is still constantly like, you're a beginner. You can't charge money for that. No, you don't know what you're doing. Who do you think you are to ask someone to pay you to help them launch their podcast, for example, which is what I'm in the midst of right now. And what you brought up about just getting out there and performing and getting on stage and getting the practice, whether it's in front of 5 people or 20 people or 100 people or whatever, that's so important because I think that I know for me, my mind spirals to that place when I'm not doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just recently I had a couple month period where I wasn't publishing any podcast episodes, and there's infinite reasons why I wasn't publishing podcast episodes. And I'm like, oh, how do I call myself a podcaster? I haven't published an episode. Oh my God, I'm such a fake. I'm a total fraud. I'm not a real podcaster. It's because I wasn't doing it. But then the second you get behind the mic and you call someone up on Skype and hit record, you're now suddenly in that mode of doing it. And it puts you right back into that place of action and forward momentum. And so that is such a good point. That was a really long rambling way of saying what a great tool for working with that imposter syndrome, which is just to do the thing that you're feeling like a fraud doing.
Yeah, it's such a perpetual cycle because you do the thing and then you start to feel confident in doing the thing. And because you feel confident, you feel like you could approach someone to actually charge money for it. And then they pay you money for it. And then you're even more confident. And then you can approach more people. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't start that like wonderful wheel moving forward, then you're just stuck.
Do you think that money or the prospect of money makes imposter syndrome worse?
Yeah, probably. Definitely. I mean, I remember when I first started booking myself, be like, how can I ask for money? And, I mean, I see my artists go through this all the time. Like, I don't know when they say, how much do you charge? I don't know what to say. And, if you have past experience to base it on, it's so much easier. Like, well, usually when I do these kind of venues, I'm paid, $300 or whatever. But if you have nothing to base that on at first, that's what's hard
Mm-hmm.
because you don't feel like you can say $300 because you haven't been paid that. But although you feel like you might be worth that, and then you're like, but what if I ask for that? And then they say yes, and then they don't think I'm worth it, until you actually get paid an amount. I mean, I remember the first time I was paid $1,000 for a concert and I didn't ask for $1,000, but someone gave me $1,000 for it. And after that, I was like, I could actually say that I've been paid $1,000 for a concert, and it gave me a lot more confidence in asking for 300,
Mm-hmm.
because then if they challenge me, I'd be like, "Well, actually, I've actually recently done a concert where I was paid 1,000," and then they'll think they're getting a good deal.
So can you tell me of a time when maybe you stepped out on a limb and took a risk that did not work out or did not go the way you planned?
I would say back before I started my solo career, when I was working at the opera and I was trying so hard to do this music career and I didn't have a clue how, and I got involved in a local band of a female band. And the reason I did that is because I didn't have the confidence to go out there and be a solo artist And so I thought, well, my way to do it then is just gonna, be in this band. But it was a risk because it was a very different kind of genre for me. It was more like alternative rock, and that was not my thing. And there was a girl that was kind of running the band, and I was just kind of like doing whatever she said, because I thought, well, she must know what she's doing, and maybe I'll just follow this, and I'll, suddenly I'll have a career. And like we made an album and we started doing some good gigs and everything. And then it just completely fell apart because of many reasons, because I never felt completely committed to it, because I felt that the genre and just the whole mission of the band was wrong for me.
Mm.
And, personalities, and let me tell you, women in bands, I mean, I'm impressed with any all-female band that stays together because there's a lot of drama, at least there was in my experience. And so, I had put 2 years of my life into that. I had rearranged my work schedule. I had done a lot of things, and it did not work out. And it almost burned me entirely for music. But luckily, I took that break and I actually had my daughter. And after about 6 weeks of having my daughter, I thought, okay, I'm ready to go back to music again. And thank goodness, but I was worried that it was completely going to sour me on music entirely.
And then how did you find your way back to an expression of music that felt authentic after that experience?
It really came entirely down to figuring out what my core values were as a musician and how I could be authentic, and realizing that one of the reasons that that experience happened to me and previous experience before that with bands of just being bad were because I was trying to do something that wasn't authentic to me. And so once I realized, this is the kind of music I naturally make, it may not be the kind of music that I want to make, but this is what comes out.
Mhm.
And also realizing, the kind of audiences that I wanted to speak to. I realized that I love performing for women. I love performing for mothers groups. And I was kind of at that time period in my life. And once I got into that mentorship community of female artists, I started talking to them and they started encouraging me, you know what, you need to do songs and stories because you have a lot of stories of stuff that's gone on and that are related to the songs that you've written. You need to create a program that is all about you and what you've learned. And when I started doing that, that was when I felt entirely authentic and happy about doing my music. And it also, it developed me as a speaker as well, which was amazing because I didn't really know that I had that talent. I knew I could, say a few things about my songs, but I actually, created a speaking presentation, and everything that came out of that and every, interaction that I had with the audience, it was completely authentic to me, and that was not something that had happened with music in a really long time. So I knew that I'd reconnected with the reason I love to make music in the first place.
And how does that affect your definition of success or what it means to be successful?
Well, I think I've realized over the years that I could never count myself successful if I wasn't being authentic, because it wouldn't be me. It would be like this other person doing it. And I'd be outside of myself watching somebody else do the things. And, there's something that I often say to my audience near the end of my program, in that the reason it's so important to me to be authentic is I don't want to put up a wall between me and the audience. And when I used to try to pretend to be somebody else on stage, there was always that wall, and it kept me from truly communicating with them. And so once I learned to take that wall down, and that's one reason I absolutely love house concerts, because it's really hard to put up that wall when people are like 4 feet away from you. And, so to me, that's kind of the journey to being authentic, is starting out in those small situations and feeling comfortable sharing yourself with them. And, that's what I started doing, not at house concerts, but in bigger venues. And I just loved the experience of taking that wall down. And to me, I would not be successful if I didn't take that wall down, because I wouldn't be truly communicating with my audience and giving them a piece of myself.
Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for someone who is either just starting out on their creative path or they're in a place where they're ready to shift from one thing to another in terms of finding that connection with their authenticity and what they feel their purpose or their passion is in the world?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the most important thing is to find a community and or a mentor, somebody that is doing the thing that you're passionate about. They're already doing it. They're a few steps ahead of you, and they can show you the direction you need to go so you don't have to figure these things all out on your own. You don't have to feel overwhelmed by all the possibilities. Just follow the path that they've laid for you, the breadcrumbs that they left behind, and it's so much easier that way.
So much time that you don't have to waste
Yeah.
when you have a guide and a
Plus,
community
you
to
have this
support you.
support system, when things go wrong, like we said earlier, when things crash and burn, you need a place to go to talk those things out and people that'll understand and people that have been there. Cause I mean, I can certainly talk to my artists and be like, yeah, I remember when I thought that this was the right thing for me and it completely exploded right in front of my eyes. And I get where you're coming from, but there's light on the other side of that tunnel.
And Bree, what is your current growing edge? Where are you most excited to be going in your business, and where are you most challenged in your business right now?
Oh gosh. I'm most excited that I'm growing our accountability mastermind within the academy because these are women that have raised their hand and said, I want to go to the next level and I want someone to keep me accountable. And whenever someone is willing to do that, my hat is off to them because I know for me, that is what actually helps me move forward constantly in my business is making myself accountable to other masterminds that I'm in or coaches that I have. And so I'm excited about that. We've just started that. We have, 6 members right now, but it just opened like 2 weeks ago. So, I'm looking forward to see where that's going. As far as challenge, for me, it's really expanding my reach and getting all the women out there that want to have a music career and that, have been struggling to know who I am and hopefully become a part of our community because I don't want you to feel isolated. That's one of the big things that I hear from our artists is like, finally a place where people understand me. Most of my family members think I'm crazy for wanting to have a music career. And I feel so isolated because nobody understands what I'm trying to do. And I don't want anyone to feel that way. I provided this community so you don't have to feel that way. So that is what I would love is to reach more people. And that's my challenge. And that's what I'm working on this year in 2017.
Okay. What I loved about talking with Bree is how open she was and how you can tell that she really, really, really has a passion for supporting female artists to be successful and fulfilled, both creatively and financially. Her focus on both mentorship and community as the bedrock for building your sustainable creative entrepreneurial practice is key. And if you're resonating with that and you are a musician, go check out breenoble.com or FemMusician, that's FEmusician.com. Check out her freebies, her resources, her community, and of course, the links to that and all of her social links, including her podcasts, will be in the show notes at thecreativeimposter.com/041. And of course, I invite you to make use of the community that I've been building for you, online or offline if you're in the Chicagoland area. Locally, that's the Chicago Women's Creative Collective, which you can link to from my site and the show notes. And online, that's the Creative Imposter Facebook group. Right now, I'm also offering a free audio course called How to Start Anything, which is a 7-step deep process into launching a new project. In fact, it's so deep, and the feedback that I've been getting is that you need some support around this process in order to really, really, really take advantage of it. So I'm only going to be offering it for free for another few weeks. I'm going to say through July 4th of 2017. And you can find that right now through July 4th at thecreativeimposter.com/magic. And then from that point on, that course is going to be available only as a paid offering. And the reason why is because part of that course will include phone time one-on-one with me to support you in making it through this process to start whatever creative project or vision it is that you're dreaming of. If you're doing the free version of this course, you can still get phone support from me. I'll put a link in the show notes of how to schedule that session. And of course, if you're catching this after July 4th, if you visit thecreativeimposter.com/magic, there will be a new gift waiting for you. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for listening, and I am wishing you a week filled with opportunities to tear down the walls between you and your audience and make a real connection based on authenticity, craft, and community.